We were told, and we believed, that part 4 was going to be the final chapter. I mean, final chapter as in no more Jason, no more Fridays, no more nothing. Therefore, it was going to be a movie about the death of Jason.
It was one of the oddest script developments I've ever been in. We worked speedily on this, and that's probably the reason that Zito wanted to leave that room with a script that he would bleed for.
I thought I would never hear from the Friday the 13th people again after the first one, because 2 went by. They did not offer me part 3. But the idea of offering me the film where I get to kill Jason made me feel like Dr. Frankenstein. I created a monster, and I get to kill him.
I thought the most interesting way to deal with a movie about the death of Jason was to bookend it with the dead Jason. We had to go back to the location where Friday 3 was shot and re-stage how it might have been. So the shot that got designed came down from the beam of the helicopter overhead, came down with it on a crane. And the Steadicam operator was actually standing on the crane, steps off the crane and starts to move, and he keeps going and running back and forth. And in the end, the idea is to go through all of this and reveal the dead Jason. I wanted you to be in the presence of the dead Jason so long that in the end, I was hoping that audiences would start cheering him to life. Then they become the authors of his resurrection. And they take the responsibility for that. I don't have to sell it to them. They're, in fact, demanding it. We went through a bunch of guys. We auditioned Jasons and found Ted White, who was a very experienced Hollywood stunt guy.
But what I had done prior to coming on to the show, I had gone down and rented number 2, I think it was 2 or 3, and I watched the way they moved, the way Jason moved, and I decided that I didn't want him to be a big, clumsy oaf. So I did change it. I changed it to where I moved faster, and I tried to make the kills a little swifter.
I remember being on the set one day, and I said something about how he should twist the head on Bruce Mahler. And I remember him saying, look, you do the makeup effects, and I'll do the stunts, meaning he knows what to do physically and I. So he got up and he walked away. I looked at Kevin Yeager and I went, and I just jumped up and I followed Ted and I stopped him. I said, you know what, when you said that, it offended me because I've done stunts. He says, yeah, I heard that about you. Everybody thought the next thing was going to be a punch, to my head. And from that moment on, we became pals.
The casting of Kimberly in this role was, I think, a really good piece of business for us because she really takes Jason on physically. This is not someone who just, screams and faints. This is someone who fights him with a hammer and pounds him into the mask.
The scenes where I was actually fighting with Ted White, who played Jason, yeah, they were really pretty violent. He's a stuntman and I'm not. And we really fighting.
The casting of this boy was a big deal, and we saw a lot of kids, and nothing seemed right. And they finally brought in this young Corey Feldman, who had experience, he had acted.
The scenes with Corey Feldman were great. He was a really sweet boy. I related to him because I was a child actor, and I had a lot of empathy for him.
He was a mean little kid. When I say mean, he was very, very active on the set. He wasn't very well-mannered, and when I finally got to the scenes where we were upstairs and I had my hand so close to him that I could have gotten a hold of him.
Still, he could take direction, and he knew the lines, and he would do them and do them over again, and wasn't cranky and wasn't childlike. He was professional.
I have to say this, as mean as he was very good in the film. I liked him. I liked the way he did it, and I liked the way he worked. I felt like he had the energy of an adult as opposed to that of a kid.
Some of the kills in the film were designed by script in advance, cooked up, in the writing process. More of the kills, or some of the better kills, I think, were designed once we had all the special effects people aboard.
When Jason kills the nurse, I had tubing glued to her leg so the blood would trickle down the side of her leg. But the tubing had come loose. So when Jason was killing her, there was just a squirt of blood from right in the middle between her legs, hit the floor and formed a puddle, and she peed blood.
Hey, honey, you got a sister? Tom sat down and went through with me exactly physiologically what would happen if I was being stabbed through the throat, that it would pierce the voice box, that, you know, all the things that it would go through and what would happen to you, what would happen to your voice, so that I could incorporate that as an actor. He had his hand on my head, but you will be absolutely safe, but don't fight me.
I think, though, the kill that meant the most to me was the kill of Rob in the basement.
I'm expecting that Tom Savini's going to come up with some way to hack as much of my flesh away as possible.
But you don't see that. You don't see any of the Tom Savini stuff that he designed, really.
We didn't want the audience to laugh when I died. He wanted to go to a more level of psychological horror than physical.
There were some arguments along the way, and one of those arguments was about the death of the mother.
We see that she's had an encounter with Jason. We know it hasn't turned out well. We never saw the actual poking or anything that went on. We didn't see any gutting or anything, no tools, implements, blood, but we're pretty sure she got it.
And the idea to me of kids watching a mother figure being ripped was extremely exciting. They're used to seeing kids being essentially punished for their loss of innocence. To see mom punished, that's grotesque.
The studio thought it would be a cool idea to have a dream sequence because it sort of relates to, part one, the original Friday the 13th.
I was originally told that this would be the last of the Jason movies, and I was told specifically to use my best screenwriting grammar to indicate that Jason is really dead. We're not kidding, really most sincerely dead.
We spent the entire shoot redesigning how Jason might get killed. There were a lot of ways. There were all kinds of suggestions.
You know, I had a death that I thought would work that involved a microwave oven, where Tommy was also a little amateur inventor, and he had a little variable, took a microwave oven apart, put a reflector behind the microwave shooter, and melted a toy soldier on 1, and the thing went up to 10. I thought at the end, when Jason is chasing his sister, Tommy could jam this thing into Jason's head and turn up to 10 and cook Jason's head from within and make it explode.
But as we got close to the end, it became clear that the best idea was the most direct one, because what happens is it lets your characters really do the killing.
So I asked Joe for 2 things. 1, can I take his mask off? Joe said yes. I said, 2, can I have him touch Trisha's breast? And Joe said no. I think the act of touching the breast would have rendered him so completely human that he has finally thought of something else to do with girls that doesn't involve killing them. That was the moment that he was completely vulnerable, as we all are in moments of love. And so what I did was I wrote a scene where instead of cutting his head off, which in a sequel he could walk around with it under his arm or in a box, I split his head open from top to bottom with that machete, the way you cut an artichoke in half. And I thought that was at least sufficiently different to think, okay, this is over.
But John Vulich one day held up the Dawn of the Dead machete that I put into Lonnie Lisa's head. I said, that's it. We'll have Tommy whack Jason in the head with the machete, but let's go further and have Jason fall on his knees, fall on the machete, and slide down the blade.
And then I get not a rewrite, but an update on how we're not really going to put the machete through his head from top to Adam's apple, but we're going to do something different, like through the eye. And I knew then that they were leaving room for a sequel.
Every death was fast. And then when Jason died, it was slow. So having to trim the effects down to perhaps satisfy the ratings board helped in punching up the effectiveness and the shock of Jason's death, because we got to show that.
I wanted to leave something for people to build on for the subsequent series. And so I wanted Tommy Jarvis to sort of catch the germ of menace that Jason had. And that's why I was building him slowly into a character who at the end could become Jason.
That scene in the hospital room where I had to put my hand around him, and they said for me to put my hand at the base of his neck so that I would hide the wrinkles from the skull cap.
There's a scene that's not in the film where Tommy is at the water fountain. And so when he turns around, water is dripping from his lips in the way that the original little skinny Jason from the first was dripping water. So Tommy was always somebody I thought would live again.
As far as I'm concerned, we killed Jason. I mean, we really killed Jason in Final Chapter.
I can't believe it's been 25 years since I shot that movie. And I never in a million years would have guessed that it would have had such a huge following like it has.
You know, after this, he wandered around cities and moons and stuff like this, whatever he did. I'm glad that he's out there and we could enjoy him some more. But we really did him in as far as I can tell.